going to there you can put it a bit higher, like a bit angled upwards. Oh, yeah, right, that way. Okay, thank you, Hashem. So we're doing Shir Hashirim today, and we're continuing the section that discusses the Susati B'Rechvei Paro. What is talking about, we mentioned it actually just now in the Alshech, about the horses of Paro. And we're going to actually read the Targum, because the Targum is basically a long midrash. And we're going to try and see how the Targum puts the whole long story into the Psukim. We'll do some Hebrew versus Aramaic and English, because basically the midrash, usually what it does is it takes the word, especially if the word seems different than usual, and then kind of explains it in a midrash way, which is not the pshat. But as we know, the Shir Hashirim doesn't really have a pshat to begin with. So it's mainly talking about things that happen, especially in the midrash and in Rashi and in Targum. It's describing events that happened with the Jewish people on Hashem. And every detail, every specific story that the lover mentions or the beloved mentions are always referring to an actual energy that we have between us and Hashem, whether it's the Beit HaMikdash or whether it's the Exodus. These things are real things. They're not just that there's this concept of love between man and woman, and there's a concept between love between Hashem and the Jewish people, and this is just talking about man and woman, and then we have to just like keep it vague in general. The rabbis actually took each verse and explained its relevance and how it happened or will happen, or it's just the concept of that relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. So the pasuk goes, I have likened you, my darling, to a horse in Paro's chariots. Right? And that's the Susati B'Rechvei Paro. And then the pasuk continues, your cheeks are beautiful with plaited wreaths, which is basically some kind of jewelry piece that seems to go across the forehead and have like tassels and gold hanging down. And that's what makes her cheeks beautiful with these things coming down. Tzavarech b'charuzim, your neck is beautiful with strings of jewel, like necklaces. And then he says, we will add gold to your wreaths and silver to your necklaces. And then that's what he tells her. That's what the three psukim that he's telling his lover. And then she replies to him, while the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. My beloved to me is like a bag of myrrh lodged between my breasts. My beloved to me is a spray of henna blooms from the vineyards of En Gedi. So she's basically just talking about that, how much she thinks of him and how much he's in her mind. So that's the English of the pasuk itself. Now I'm going to read the Targum on this pasuk, which we said is the horse. I've likened you to my horses. So the following Targum it says the following. When Israel went out of Egypt, Pharaoh and his army pursued after them with chariots and horsemen. So now we see the theme of the horses. And the way was closed for them on four sides, as we just saw in Holy Alshech. On the right, on the right and the left, there was wilderness that were full of fiery serpents. Behind them was the wicked Pharaoh and his armies, and in front of them was the Red Sea. What did the Holy One, blessed be He, do? He revealed Himself in the fullness of His strength at the sea. He dried up the sea. But this is an interesting thing that I've never seen anywhere else. And it says, but the mud He did not dry up. So the wicked, the Erev Rav amongst them, said He can dry up the waters of the sea, but He can't dry the mud. They're focusing on the lack of what they didn't have, the fact that it wasn't a VIP experience. At that time, Hashem became very angry with them, and He would have drowned them in the sea with Paro. But if not for Moshe the prophet, who stretched out his hands in prayer before Havaya, and turned back the anger of Hashem from them. And he and the righteous of that generation opened their mouths and sang songs. And they passed in the midst of the Yam Suf on dry land by virtue of the merits of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the beloved ones of Hashem.
So it did become dry?
So eventually it did. No, it didn't become dry, it could be.
The land?
According to this chart, it doesn't say it became dry eventually. It's just that the complaint was gonna cause Hashem to have anger, but Moshe died. Moshe prayed. So the way the Midrash describes it is very interesting. He says, "Lesusati" is an interesting word. We said last time already. It means my horse, a horse. The Midrash says, it brings Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Eliezer have an argument. The Susati can also be read Lesasti. Sason means joy. So they say the Sasati I almost had joy in killing you, just like I would have killed the Egyptians. But Dimitri Yorayati, your shepherd Moshe, kept my anger silent, and I. So it's very strange, like how the Midrash gets to that. But I guess the Targum is going along these lines, and also in the merit of the Avot, who are also the shepherds, the three shepherds, as part of the seven shepherds. So that's why it mentions also the fact that it was in the schut of the three patriarchs. So that's the pasuk, the first pasuk. Now the pasuk continues that you had all of this jewelry, gold and silver. So when they went out of the wilderness, continues the next pasuk, Hashem said to Moshe, how fit is it that the people be given the law's commands, right? The Torah. So the Hebrew word in this pasuk is navu lechayayich batorim. Torim can also be read as Torah, the two Torahs, which will be like bridles between their jaws, so that they do not depart from the good path. Just as a horse which has a bridle between its jaws does not depart. Is it bridle or bridle? Basically something in the horse's mouth. Yeah. So the Torah is going to keep their cheeks in check. As we learned last week, that the horse is the whole avodah of a human being is to know how to bridle the horse. So the Torah is going to be what's going to control the horse of the Jewish people. How fit is it that their neck bear the yoke of my commands, which will be on them like a yoke on the neck of an ox that plows in the fields and supports himself and his master. So we're basically saying that the Jewish people, it's fit for meaning the Jewish person's jewelry is to have the yoke of Torah on his neck and the bridle of the Torah in his mouth to not get out of check, which is a very interesting explanation in this passage, which seems to be talking about jewelry, and he's actually putting it into more of a intense forcing type of situation of yoke and force. But the way he's put it into the pasuk is batorim, as we said, the Torah. Tzavarech, your yoke is on the neck. Charuzim, I believe, means like lines of the plow. Because that's what it means. I'm not sure exactly how he gets that. But then he points out an interesting point that the ox supports him and his master. And this is also continuing the theme we had, that the theme of the Jewish people actually giving energy to the godly worlds. And so what we're doing here, we're plowing the physical world, but it's actually giving food and giving energy to us and to Hashem. And that's the beauty and the power that Hashem invested in us. And then the next pasuk says, in as follows, the Targum, it was said to Moshe, come up to the firmament, I will give you the 2 tablets of stone, hewn from sapphire from my kisei kavod, bright as pure gold, arranged in lines, written by my finger, upon which I describe the 10 commandments, refined more than silver, purified more than 7 times, totaling 49, the number of ways to interpret what's in the Torah. And I will give you them by hand to the people of the house of Israel. So now he's saying that Torah Zav Nasalach, I'm going to give you the luchot, which are like purified like gold, and the Kudat HaKasef, which is the 49 levels of Torah, which is purified silver. So now he's going to talk about the golden calf, because the pasuk says, Ad Sham Melech Mesibo, while Hashem was at Har Sinai, we screwed up already. So he says, while Moshe the rabbi was still in the Shamayim to receive the 2 tablets, the wicked of that generation and the Erev Rav amongst them arose and made the golden calf, and they corrupted their deeds, and they earned a bad reputation in the world. While previously their fragrance had gone forth in the world, after this they smelled like nard, which has a terrible odor, and the plagues of leprosy came down upon the flesh. So again, here is very lot of words into the pasuk, which basically describes the fact that the Ad Sham Melech Mesibo, while Moshe was still hanging out with Hashem, Nirdi natan reicha, instead of the beautiful fragrance that I gave off, I'm giving off a not good odor. And now the Targum is going to the next pasuk. The Targum says very interesting, the continuation of the story. At that time, Hashem said to Moshe, "Go descend, for your people have gone wrong. Go away from me, and I will destroy them." Then Moshe turned and begged mercy from Hashem, and the favor Hashem remembered the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, whose father bound him on the altar. And Hashem turned from his anger and made his presence dwell amongst them as before. Right? So here is interesting how the pasuk says Tzror Hamor. So really it means a bundle of more, of myrrh. But the Medrash is saying Tzror means tying, and Mor is Ara Moria. So it's referring to the zchut of Yitzchak, who was tied and bound on Moria. Dodili, and that caused Hashem to return back to me. Ben Shaddai Alin, and therefore he made the Shechina rest in the Mishkan. And as we know, the Gemara says, why does the pasuk refer to the Shechina resting in the Mishkan like breasts? Because in the Holy of Holies there was the Aron, and the sticks that carried the Aron that the Kohanim used was protruding slightly or pushing the parochet forward, and it looked like a woman's breasts, the two from the outside. So that was to describe the Shechina resting in between those two sticks. So that's describing the fact that Hashem, after the Egel, he gave us the Mishkan where there's the Shechina's resting. The only interesting thing is though that it seems that it was in the zchut of Yitzchak. The kapara and the Egel was in the zchut of Yitzchak being bound at the Akedah. And I wonder how that's connected at all. Like why that specifically is the zchut in this case. It could be that there's a concept of a ram's horn, and there's the egel is a cow. There's different things about the horns of a cow and the horn of a ram, but I don't know. So let's do one more pasuk. When Moshe came down with the 2 tablets of stone in his hand, but his hands were heavy because of the sins of Israel. So it's an interesting thing that how we say that Moshe dropped the luchot because he was suddenly carrying all the sins, and the tablets fell and were broken. So it's almost as if he didn't throw them down, he's saying that it fell. And then Moses went and crushed the calf, scattered its dust in the river, and made the children of Israel drink. And he killed everyone who deserved to be killed. And he ascended a second time to Shemaim and prayed before Hashem, and made kapara for Am Yisrael. There he was commanded to make the Mishkan and the Aron. At that time, Moses hurried and made the Mishkan and all of its vessels and the Aron, and he put in the Aron, the ark, 2 other tablets. And he appointed the sons of Aaron, the priest, to offer the sacrifices on the altar and to offer a libation of wine at the sacrifice. And where did he get the wine for libations? They were in the desert, weren't they? Not a convenient place for agriculture, and surely no figs, vines, or pomegranates. But they went to the vineyards of En Gedi and took a bunch of grapes from there and pressed the wine from them and offered it as a libation on the altar, a quarter of a hin for each lamb. So it's a very strange connection again, where something specific about the libations is mentioned as like the culmination of the Mishkan being built after this whole atonement, is that they went to En Gedi and got the Mishkan. There seems to be lots of interesting secrets happening here. But the way it's connected into the pasuk says, Eshkol HaKofer. And it means a bundle of henna. But in this midrash, kofer is like kapara. So Moshe went up and received kapara. Dodili, and we brought the Shechina to my beloved to be with me in the Mishkan. The Karmei En Gedi is the vineyards that they got the libations from in the Mishkan. So that's the Targums here on these psukim. And the truth is that Rashi goes on a slightly different way, and we mentioned that earlier as well. That Rashi, that the psukim here are referring to the spoils that they took out of Egypt. So he says that Tzavarech b'charuzim is the spoils at the Red Sea. So now he says as follows. Rashi says, you already had gold and silver, but we will add gold and silver to you. So Rashi says that Hashem is telling the Jews that me and my court discussed this plan. Lifnei bo paro, that we are going to force Paro and play around with his heart. I'm going to make him chase the Jews, and I'm going to entice him and harden his heart to pursue you with all the best of his hidden treasures, so that we should make circles of gold ornaments for you. So actually Hashem made Paro make the stupid decision of taking all of his gold and silver. Why would he take all his gold and silver out to war? Like, he's literally just going to fetch the Jews. But Hashem messed with his head, and that's how Hashem made the Jews have more than they already had until then from the Exodus itself. And then Rashi brings the story with the golden calf, like we saw in the Targum. While the Jews were still at Har Sinai, they already sinned, and the fragrance gave forth a bad fragrance, and they lost their fragrance. And this is an interesting the Gemara in Shabbos and in Gittin, that the Gemara says, it doesn't say when the king was still at Har Sinai, they stank, or they became completely moldy. Interesting, they basically stench. It doesn't say stench. It says natan recha. It gave off a scent. It uses a very light language. Instead of saying they were completely smelly and stinky, it says that it gave off a scent to describe that even while they're sinning, there's still love and there's still respect, the way Hashem describes the sin. And then he says that obviously, like the Targum said, that the kapara, Hashem told them to build the Mishkan. And then Rashi brings the Midrash we said about the two sticks of the Aron. And Rashi says that again the Karmeh and Gedi, that so Rashi says the mashal of the Karmeh and Gedi is describing the many forgiveness and atonements Hashem gave them after all of the sins in the Midbar. So it seems, I'm not sure how Rashi puts it into the thing. He says that basically, he says that there's a midrash that the vineyards in En Gedi used to give off produce 4 to 5 times a year. So the fact that we're describing the kofer, the kapara, and we're comparing it to the vineyards of En Gedi, so we're basically saying that there wasn't just one atonement, there was many atonements. And it's like we just saw that Moshe was actually pointing out to the Jews how much they sinned. And actually the Ramban, very interestingly, says the reason Moshe felt he needed to tell them about the sins is not so much about rebuke. He says it's to point out how Hashem is patient with them. That they've sinned time and time again, you would think Hashem would given up and just find someone else and just cancel the plan. But Hashem doesn't pull the plug because he forgives. And that is the only way for people to feel that they have a fighting chance. He says, if people are going to go into the land, we've got this crazy Torah you're telling us to keep. Why should we even bother? And that's why Hashem said no. Because Hashem forgives, and Hashem's patient, and He understands our struggles. And as the pasuk says in Psalms and Tehillim 130, as we say in the 10 days of Tshuva, Ki imcha slicha, because you give us forgiveness, leman tivareh, in order that we can fear you. The fact that Hashem gives us forgiveness, it's to enable us to fear Him. Because if He wouldn't forgive us, we wouldn't even begin fearing Him, because it would be a losing battle. So we think that sometimes the fact that we say Hashem forgives causes lack of fear of Hashem. But the truth is, if taken maturely and taken in the right way, it actually gives us the fact that we can try. So we'll finish up. This was the Targum and the Rashi, with the Midrash basically describing how all of these psukim are referring to the Exodus, the specifically the spoils of the Exodus, and obviously there's the aspect that Hashem wanted them to have riches. There's also the deeper Kabbalistic aspect that Egypt was full of spiritual sparks of Kedusha, and they all arrived in Egypt because they were the place of what's called the Yesod, the reproductive organ of the world was Mitzrayim, and that's why it's called Ervat Haaretz, because the erva and all the shefa, all the abundance goes down to the Yesod. That's why the Arizal says that all of these sparks were there, and when the Jews left, it says in the Gemara, they left it like a storehouse without any grain, or like a pool without any fish, because they completely drained it of any kedusha, and they took it out, and all of these spoils were physical manifestations of the fact of all the spiritual spoils that the Shekhinah received, and they were rectified and brought with them. So that seems to be, and that's with these spoils they built the Mishkan, right? And that was the idea of the fact that Hashem gave them the opportunity to build a Mishkan by rectifying the world through the Egyptian slavery. And that was like a very difficult interaction with physical reality, and that really broke down the, like it's like the pasuk says it, like it's a melting, what's it called, a smelting thingy, right? What's the word for it? Crucible, right? So that's where they really broke down the physical problems, so to speak, and came out with the most beautiful version of how to be in the physical world, and that was really the Mishkan. The Mishkan was the version of the world where Hashem can exist in. So that's really the process here, and unfortunately in the middle we have the Egel that also brings out the love between Hashem, that even though the plan was that they should leave Egypt and build a Mishkan without the Egel, or that they should have the Shekhinah without all this problem, that even though they sinned with the Egel, Hashem didn't cancel the plan, and He still went ahead with the plan, and He forgave them, and they were able to build the Mishkan and continue in this journey. So we're just going to finish off with the Malbim, because the Malbim is always very beautiful. And we know that the Malbim, if you remember from other times, that the Malbim really explains the whole Shir Shirim with Shlomo's soul, because Shlomo had a very big soul, like every Jew, but specifically Shlomo's soul, but he also had a body, and his body was actually quite strong, because he was a king and he had like big ambitions. He had like a certain level of like, you wouldn't say ego, but you would say like, he had passions, and these passions, like the passion for fame and power and money and wealth and specifically women. We know Shlomo had a weakness with women, and so we have Shlomo's soul coming down into this world, being trapped by the body and the body's energies that the body is susceptible to being hijacked by. And that is the story of this girl who has a lover, but she's been kidnapped by the king. So in the story, the way the mashal works according to the Malbim is that there's this cute shepherd and shepherdess that have this, they're minding their own business and they're in love, and suddenly the king sees her and grabs her and says, and she's desperate to leave, but she's just made as one of the king's wives, and he's trying to tempt her into pulling her in emotionally, as that she should actually want him, but she's always remembering about her pure innocent love that she always had and she still has. So in the Psukim until now, it's describing how she's asking her lover to give her hints to where he is, where he's shepherding, where you at, and he's like, he's trying to give her hints and ways to get out. And Rav Malbim says that this actually worked in Shlomo's life as well. Shlomo was constantly battling his bodily desires and his Yetzer Hara and the pulls of the world, and he was able to actually receive prophecy. And that was the first prophecy Shlomo received, was the prophecy of where Hashem came to him in a dream and said you can choose either wisdom or strength, and that was his first breakthrough. And this is the breakthrough we're going to describe now, where Shlomo actually managed to escape. He got the hint. So we're talking about now, the soul is like this girl that's been kidnapped from the place of pure love, and she's been brought into this place of hedonism and power of the king's palace, and she's supposed to feel comfortable there with all of the luxuries and the fact that she's a queen, but she doesn't fall for it, and she's constantly trying to get to the truth and to her true connection. So he says that you're like a horse to me. Why are you like a horse to me? Because it's just as if I had one horse that was good, my personal horse, and the king, who has many horses, just grabbed my horse and made it one of his. And now it's very cute because you have lots of jewelry that you didn't have when you were with me, because I didn't have any jewelry to give you. So now you've become a royal horse with all of the jewelry that a royal horse gives you. So Malbim is telling us that so Shlomo was trapped into the world of the Yetzer Hara. He got too many horses and all the wealth and he married 1,000 women and the daughter of Paro, which specifically is the sexual immorality, as we said, the Erevat Haaretz of Mitzrayim. So he was pulled into that and also into other bodily and ego pulls. But then he managed to overcome that and get out of it and get into this prophecy. And now he's having this awareness of what has changed from when he used to be with that pure love and to where he is now. And basically Hashem, or the lover, basically pointing out to him that it's not all bad. The fact that you've come into a body has given you a new appreciation of what Hashem is. Because a soul, Rav Malbim goes into quite specifics of how a soul perceives things and how a body changes the whole perception of things, specifically regarding space and time and logical reasoning, how things are built and predicated upon points of reductionist and what's the word, process of elimination and process, all kinds of different ways to come to conclusions. There's always a process, whereas the soul just has the truth without all the processes, and also it has the truth without words, without having to use outside stickers or pointers to refer to things. So the whole concept of words and communication through words and using words to understand things is purely a bodily limitation. So he's saying that now that the body the soul has come into the body, it actually has received jewelry that it wouldn't have had if it would remained in a bodily, in a soully state. And that's what he's saying, that the soul says that how that was possible, because, and she tells him that even though I was with the king while he was on his couch, and all the delicacies were here, all I could smell was the smell of your perfume, or whatever kind of herbs he used to carry around. And she says, no, first of all, I actually imagined it, and it felt very close to my heart. It felt like it was between my breasts, meaning her heart was in touch with Hashem. There was this connection through the soul. And another thing, it was like the vineyards of En Gedi, who have a very strong smell that carries in the wind for a while. So there's the concept of the soul, while it's in the body, it's able to not be distracted by the king's parties, or the Yitzhahara's parties that he's throwing, and rather either access Hashem through the soul, which is in the heart, like between the breasts, or it's access things through understanding Hashem through the world outside, and that's considered like the smell of the vineyards coming from outside. So that's the Malbim explaining how Shlomo HaMelech is describing his experience and the benefit, which is very interesting because a lot of Hassidus, Chabad specifically, talk a lot about this idea of like what's the benefit of a soul going down into a body if the whole purpose is to come back out of it. And Malbim has introduced this concept that it's really the answer of why Hashem created the world in the first place, because it's giving the whole concept of creation is the diminishment of things and to be broken down into processes, into time, into space, and that gives godliness more expression and more dynamic perspective and different revelations that are not possible in the state of oneness. So this is like on a macro level the purpose of creation, but also on a micro level the purpose of every person being invested in a limited state of mind and a completely blocked version of reality, because there's actually beauty and the mitzvot and the day-to-day struggles that come out of this that actually give new tools to the soul. And that's really what we said before in Rav Alshech as well, that the soul in the body is actually building something that it doesn't have. It builds levushim and garments and things that are actually happening through the breaking down and the limitation of the soul, and the soul actually being, instead of being pulled into the king's party, is pulled into the pure love that is true. So as Hashem, we should be able to get out of the box and not be pulled into the baseless hedonism of the king's party, but to be pulled into the pure, simple love of our souls. Amen. Okay.